All right, good morning, afternoon. Yep, 2 minutes afternoon, in fact. Hope everyone's having a great start to your day. I, for one, am loving the early September weather. It's fantastic. I know you're all in agreement with me. We're going to forget that it's November 8th, but we will take the sunshine as long as we can possibly have. I would like to invite Julie Cotton up to give us some thoughtful words today. Julie?
Good morning, everyone. Great to see all your beautiful faces and online. Thank you, Andrew and Carlos and Deb and Jason and Phil and Stan and Paul and everybody else. We are going to open with some words from Rumi. They're not my words, but I'll share them with you because I like them. They're from Great Wacken. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Bow your heads with me. Heavenly Father, we just thank you so much for the food we receive here each and every week, for the gift that it is to be of service to a community that we love. Make us beacons of light to light the way where others may be in darkness. May we spread love and joy and compassion and peace wherever we go. The pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the four-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. All right, David Devereaux greeted everyone as they came in. He's going to introduce our guest for today.
We have one guest today, Brian.
And in fact, we've been expecting Ryan. This is Ryan Hoffman. Ryan is a prospective new member, I think we have to technically. Yes. But is from the Warsaw Club and was weighing options, and I think he may wish to join our club. So we'll be talking to you soon.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right. If you have any announcements, please make your way forward, and while those folks are doing so, I just wanted to make a note for Thursday morning. If you want to join the Morning Division Club, I'm not sure if they've settled totally on what the program will be. There may be someone from the ELKR County Historical Museum, or they may be doing a hands-on service project. So I'm sorry I don't have any more information than that, but if you want to join, and I'll try to send out an email on that this week through Club Runner once I hear back from Bob and what's going on with morning. Let's see, bootleg service dates, November 13th. This Saturday morning, it's another chance to go help out at Boot Lake, and man, if the weather is anything like it is today, it'd be a nice day to be out there. So meet at 10 a.m. out at the parking lot, and they'll put you to work. It's a perfect deal, kind of at midway between morning and noon. It's a nice time to be outside. Next week, Monday at noon, we have Carl Dickerson. He's the founder of Dickerson Literacy Initiatives and working in collaboration with the Peace Corps and Partnering for Peace, which is a really cool Rotary program. And we're going to learn more about that. And thanks to Ashley Bowen for helping to coordinate that program. If you don't already, you have November 29th on your calendars already. Someone else is going to tell you why. You'll have Friday, December 10th on your calendar because that is restaurant fundraising for Salvation Army. And we've also got Salvation Army bell ringing on Saturday, December 11th. And that's enough from me for right this moment. Julie, another announcement?
All right, yes. November the 29th is our 5th Monday, and our social committee is planning, and there's still some details coming in. I have a couple of sheets going around to your tables. One is an indicator of interest. A couple of places that we're looking at, where we're honed it down to about 2 places either. Shall I announce? So that you guys can know, or no? We'll wait till we know. There's 2 places downtown Elkhart where to be determined, but they both need a head count for the event. So I'm sending out one piece of paper that just says, hey, I'm interested, or hey, I'm coming, and here's my +1 or +4 is a social event. So I'm going to invite some potential members to join me, people that I've been talking to about the Rotary Club. I think might be a perfect event for them to come and join and see that we're these amazing humans. We're not just all about service. We're actually humans too. Aaron, yes? It's in the evening, so it starts at 6 o'clock, cocktail hour, mingling will start at 6, dinner will be at 6:30. So, hey, I'm interested, or hey, I'm coming, and here's my plus number. And then the entertainment or the program for that evening is going to be us. You are the stars. Congratulations. Yes. Rotary's Got Talent. We found that out during Trivia Week. So a lot of us have these hidden talents. You could play the ukulele. You could do beat poetry. You might be an amazing ballroom dancer. I don't care what your thing is, but come and share it with us. So if you're interested in being part of the Rotary's Got Talent or the open mic event, just put your name down. You do not have to perform to come to the event. You do not have to perform to come. So you can come. Hey, I'm coming. Hey, I'm coming, and I would like to be on stage. Thanks.
Good afternoon. As you all know, Terry Rickle and myself have been helping out the Concord Rotarian brothers and sisters, selling these chances for them for an opportunity to win 2 tickets to the Super Bowl and 4 nights in a hotel in LA and $1,000. That's the first prize. The second prize is $1,000, and third prize, et cetera, et cetera. So if anybody is interested in getting any of these today that didn't get them from Terry last week, just let me see your hands and we'll make sure we take care of you. And looks like everybody is good, but if anybody decides to change their mind, they're 1 ticket for $5 and 5 tickets for $20. Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Julie. Yeah, it's a great, it's a fun thing. Good to help raise some funds and a chance to win some cool stuff. There's like cash prizes available in that too, if you don't win even if you don't win the big one. Okay. Every year in the springtime, Ryan, we give away, this year was about $25,000. Usually it's around $10,000 to $12,000. We do that through grants to our local not-for-profits in the area. And the way that we raise those funds are through some fun finds that we do right here at our noon division. And we each week need someone to come help us raise a few dollars. And so I'd like to invite David Neeser. So is it $5 just to make you shut up? No, okay, I'll step away.
Mr. Gard, give $1.
I have 5.
Okay, just put it in the same time. Saves time. Good afternoon, 12:10. Did anyone have issues being late to church or early to church on Sunday? No? Did anyone go to church on Sunday? My name is Dave Neeser, and I'll be taking your money today, but I'm going to continue my recent binge into finding people to give people compliments. So what I'll do is I'll name a name, take volunteers who would like to stand up and speak loud enough so I can repeat it to the folks at home, or online, and the funnier the better. So, Pete McConnell, Pete, stand up. Does anyone want to volunteer to give that nice young man with wonderful hair a compliment today? Go ahead.
I would love to remind me of Jerry Lewis.
Lisa says Pete reminds her of Jerry. Lisa, that's $2. Everybody, Julie, sorry, $2, and everybody else $1. Pete, you don't have to give $1 yet. Terry was kind enough to let me sit next to her. Terry Rickles, stand up, please. Okay, any volunteers to give Terry Rickle a comment or a compliment? A comment, yeah. That would be everybody. Compliment.
I'm on it.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to thank Terry Rickle for all the services she does around this community. She volunteers for a bunch of different organizations, and is one of those people who says yes 99% of the time. And that works out really, really well for those 99% of folks who have her help.
Excellent. Terry is a wonderful community volunteer. Thank you, Terry. Now you have to listen to a joke that you'll pay $1 for in advance. Okay. If April showers bring May flowers, can you, what do May flowers bring? That's $5 for all of you. Where do you find a turkey with no legs? Anyone? Exactly where you left it. All righty. And then last for the computer geeks. What did the turkey say to the computer? Google, Google, Google. Okay. That concludes. If you haven't maxed out your fines, please max out. Thank you. Have a great day.
Short and sweet, Dave. I love it. That's good. So thanks everybody for your contributions there. Speaking of contributions, I forgot to mention, and Howard was unable to be here today. He's got some training for the district, but he reminded me that November is Rotary Foundation Month. And so if you have not yet made your contribution to the Rotary Foundation, I encourage you to do so. And also, we have now a limited time offer, and I think that's during the month of November. We have a matching gifts opportunity. So this is through our district. District 6540 is making a special offer from November 1 through January 31. So immediately right there, I was wrong. So through January 31, 2022, your personal donation of $100 to $5,000 to the annual fund of the Rotary Foundation will be matched with foundation recognition points. So a point per dollar. Your matching foundation recognition points can be used in several ways. You can get that for your own Paul Harris designation. You can recognize another individual with a Paul Harris Fellow designation, or you can do a combination of those things. So the instructions I'm going to send out via email. This is a multi-faceted discipline right here in terms of sharing this information. So for some of you who like a hard piece of paper to look at, I have some of those right here. And if you want one, I'll walk these out to you, or I'll leave them right here on this paper. And it gives you instructions. But you can actually make your donation online by logging into myrotary.org, something I shared and blundered through last week. I think we made a donation online, and we'll see how many of you are paying attention to my credit card number as I entered it live on the screen. And you can actually fill out a form at rotary6540.org that helps to make sure that they tie those matching points in. you know Rotary, I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but we have instructions right here. And I'll email this out to everyone as well. There's links on there where to go. It's a pretty easy piece of cake, but it's a great way to contribute and make a difference all around the world for all the great things that Rotary does. I participated, I think I mentioned this in my email out, but again, it bears repeating that we had a gala on Thursday night online, and it was nice to see a few of you there. There was some really nice comments made about our fellow club member, Mike Crable, and all the donations that were made in Mike Crable's memory. It was very nice. They did great with their goal that night. Raised, I think, almost $45,000. What was it, Terry? It was close to that. It was pretty amazing. So really nice outpouring of memorial there for Mike. And also, of course, all that Rotary can do for the world. So that was a very nice tribute. And it was nice to be a part of that. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, again, it's never quite as easy as I feel like it should be, but we'll work through it, and I would be happy to help, and I'll provide some reminders. And if nothing else, look for that email with this sheet on it. It's got really detailed instructions, but it's also got the links that you need to click right through. And if you're not a link clicker and online giver, you can send your check directly as well. They still accept that kind of money. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce today's speaker. And I think is your significant other online today? Did she paying attention? Right, that's what I was thinking. So Jeff Burbrink is here, and Jessica might be on, might have overlooked her. Jeff is the extension educator, and what's CED stand for?
County Extension Director.
County Extension Director.
That's not you.
That's not you. Okay. I'll tell you where I found that online. So Jeff's an extension educator for Purdue Extension, and I just wanted to give a little bit about Jeff and his background. Jeff's a native of Columbus, Indiana. So there is a Columbus, Indiana in Bartholomew County. For those new to Indiana geography, there's a Bartholomew County as well. Jeff graduated from Purdue University in 1982. Paul Warning. Any other Purdue fans in here will admit to it? I know Paul is. Majoring in agriculture economics. In May 1990, Jeff completed his MBA at IU South Bend, further completing his interest in financial management. Following graduation from Purdue in 1982, Jeff joined the Purdue Extension staff member as an extension educator. And he's worked in that capacity in Bartholomew, Elkhart, and Noble counties, and returned to Elkhart County in 1994. He's worked for Purdue for more than 39 years. And as an educator, Jeff works with farmers, landowners, landscapers, garden centers, and homeowners, and I'll add botanic gardens, because we've worked together and used Wellfield as a classroom for that a time or two. And he also coordinates the local Purdue Master Gardener Program, which has more than 700 participants since its founding in 1996. I'm sure some of you know a Master Gardener. Jeff writes a nationally recognized weekly news column that appears in several local and state publications. He's a member of the Elkhart County Parks Board, the Elkhart County Planning Commission, and any number of groups or communities that need input from the agricultural community. As I mentioned, Jeff is married to Jessica, one of our fellow Rotarians. He's got 2 girls in college and sons that have graduated from college. Jeff, thanks so much for being here. I'm going to see if I can pull this up. We're going to share the screen.
Well, I have been, over the last few months, watching the Elkhart Rotary from time to time as my wife has been online. I usually ask her about 11 o'clock on Monday, what's your topic this week? And if it's of interest, then I usually sit in on it too. So it's always been kind of fun. My office is located in Goshen at the fairgrounds. The Extension Office, or the Purdue Extension Office, is a part of Purdue University as well as county government. And we, among other things, have the 4-H program that runs through our office. We also have the agricultural side of the office, master gardeners, and we also have a section on health and human services, which some of you may know better as a code for home economics. So anyway, today I was asked if I could say a few words about GMOs, what they are, that sort of thing. It's been a talk that I've been giving different locations around the county recently. We get a lot of folks that are very concerned about GMOs. Whenever you get to talking about anything agriculture related, if they're not farmers, typically they get a little concerned about that. I think there's part of the reason is because of food. You know, people think, oh, this might be bad for me, it might affect genetics, and it may raise a little bit of fear in them. About 88% of scientists don't believe that there's any kind of issue with genetically modified foods, but 37% of the public, only 37% of the public feels the same. So there's quite a few people that are a little nervous about the subject of genetically modified organisms. Back in 1983 was the first time that any genes were transferred from one type of plant to another type of plant. At that time, it was pretty crude. What they did was they took a 22 bullet, they hollowed out the end of that bullet, they fired it at a little donut piece of metal. It was a little hole in it. That genetic material that was placed in the end of that scooped out area, the bullet was fired at this hole in the donut, and the donut would be, the donut hole would be splattered with the genetic material, and then they would harvest cells from whatever leaf was on the other side of that hole, grow them out, and see if they had gained any new types of growth habits. So these days they use something called CRISPR, which you've probably heard about. If any of you listen to NPR, about every third word on Friday afternoons is usually the word CRISPR, it seems like, when they do the Science Fridays. As far as what scientists call genetically modified organisms, they tend to use the word transgenic crops rather than that, because it's probably a little bit more realistic about what it actually is. These two ladies are the two that invented CRISPR. They received the Nobel Prize back in 2020 for a technique that can go in and basically, like a pair of scissors, remove a gene, pull that gene out, put it in another type of organism, another type of plant in this case. These transgenic crops have been very widely adopted since they were since they first came out in 1996. About anywhere between 75 to 100% of the crops that are planted in any given year since 2016 have been some sort of a genetically modified crop of some sort or another. The number one has been these, what they call HT soybeans. HT stands for herbicides. They're resistant to particular types of herbicides, so they can go through, spray over the top of the herbicide that otherwise would have killed the plant. Cotton, corn are the other two major crops that they have inserted various types of genes into. Farmers have taken on this new technology not because it makes them a whole lot of money, but because it saves them expenses. It's not, in agriculture, you make your profit by being a lower cost producer than the other people around you. And so that's how you make your money. Why they have adopted this technology, because it saves them money. Those people who don't adopt the new technology end up having a higher cost per acre, and eventually they will go out of business. Oh, and by the way, It is not illegal in the United States to make a profit. In fact, it's highly encouraged. So people can get concerned. They get concerned that GMOs are not natural. They get concerned that GMOs are not safe to eat, that they damage the environment. They have that they are consolidating the control of agriculture into the hands of a few corporations. They are concerned that they have no benefit to consumers, and they have not delivered on their promises. And a lot of those concerns are actually true, that they haven't done, that they haven't been. For instance, if you look at the map up here, the green map of Indiana, that's how Indiana looked back in 1820. It was primarily forested area. Today, if you look at the picture over here, that's what most of Indiana looks like now, doesn't it? Cornfields, soybean fields. That is not natural. GMOs are not natural. Indiana is not natural anymore. This is what Indiana looks like these days. It's non-forested for the most part. Our food plants are no longer natural. A couple hundred years ago, if you were to go out and look for plants that look like broccoli or cauliflower, this is what you would have seen. This is the wild cabbage that led to things like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, cauliflower, kale, and kohlrabi. All those plants, every single one of those plants up there are the same genetically. They have been modified to produce different types of food. They all have the same Latin name. If the flowers would come out at the same time, they could cross with each other, but the flowers don't come out at the same time. Here's some other examples of some genetically modified plants done the slow way. This is what a wired watermelon used to look like. Here's what they look like today. This is a wild banana. That's what they look like today. This is a wild eggplant, which, by the way, is also related to tomatoes and nightshade. That's what they look like today. Wild carrots don't look very yummy. That's what they look like today. And that's what the first ears of corn looked like, and that's what they look like today. So we have manipulated genetics the slow way for centuries. We just now have a way of doing it a little faster, and also taking genes from another plant and putting it in another plant to hopefully get some desirable characteristics. Back in the 50s, when atomic bombs were all the rage, they started doing some things with radiation, trying to modify plants, and the result was some flowers that could get change colors. They found out that they could create barley with resistance to powdery mildew, which is the #1 big problem, barley. And then they also found out how to produce seedless grapefruit through the use of radiation. Again, that's manipulation of genes. So these unnatural methods have been used for centuries. So, for instance, when you all buy tomato plants at the garden center, and you see those 3 or 4 letters on the tomato plant, say VFNT or something like that, that means that genes have been taken from essentially what was a wild tomato or potato plant and inserted into that particular plant to give it resistance to diseases. And just as an example, locally, O.J. Icey from Goshen, Indiana, was one of the folks who worked with the development of seedless watermelons. He did all that research out there on State Road 4 here locally. And grafting of trees is not natural. No trees ever graft themselves. But we have used that characteristic of having a weakened root system to make trees shorter, more compact, easier to harvest, and also collect more light from a given space and crowding them together. So none of that is natural. So, you know, the bottom line is, I'm just going to pass over this real quick, is that basically they're right. GMOs are not natural, and neither is a lot of the other stuff we've been doing for a number of years. So, as far as the environmental impact of GMOs, yes, they have changed the way we use pesticides quite a bit, both in good ways and bad ways. Evolution of pesticides, resistant to pesticides, has been one of the big things. There's some fear of off-target effects. Really hasn't panned out yet. This slide right here shows all that red from here going up like that. That is the number of acres of soybeans that are now resistant to glyphosate. And that's a good thing, because they can go across the fields and spray glyphosate, which is I know you see all the TV commercials that are designed to scare people into calling an attorney, but it was a very easy way to control weeds. Now we're seeing resistance because that's all they did. All they did was use Roundup, and now if you use it too many years in a row, you end up with resistance. They have also been using Roundup resistance in corn and also in cotton too. Has reduced herbicide costs quite a bit, but now we're seeing things like this, where you have weeds that are getting resistant to constant pressure from using the same herbicide over and over and over again. People were not smart about the way they used it. Now, those of you who are gardeners may have heard of BT, or Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacteria that lives naturally in the soil. BT genes have been inserted into corn to make them resistant to several different kinds of basically caterpillar type larvae, including corn borer and corn rootworm. The amount of insecticide used on local farms is almost zero now at this point in time. And that's true across the Midwest, because we just do not have the insects. In fact, one of the big things back in '82 when I started working here in Elkhart County was corn borer. I cannot remember the last time I had a corn borer question. I just don't get those anymore. So it's actually had even a bigger effect overseas, because those folks don't farm with the big heavy equipment. You see this gentleman winding his way through a cotton field here, spraying. That's the way they apply a lot of their products in those countries, and they have not had to be doing that because the BT inserted into the cotton or corn has been able to knock back the use of insecticides tremendously. So it has had a very positive effect on the health and welfare of people in those countries. So the bad part is that once you start inserting these genes, for some reason, some of these companies want to make a little bit of money off of it. And so the cost of seed has risen dramatically. We're seeing what used to be bags of seed corn around here that would sell for 60, 70 bucks for a bag, and now sell for $300 a bag. The cost has gone up tremendously. It's, you know, like I said, it's not a sin to make a profit, but it sometimes gets in your crawl a little bit too, doesn't it? So, and that concern that people had about the industry kind of consolidating, well, that's happening too. This is a slide from 96 to 2013. You see Monsanto, Syngenta, DuPont, Bayer. Now, I want to flip to the next slide. This is just 5 years difference. That's Monsanto now. They got bought out by Bayer. Bayer's become a huge player. Monsanto's down to almost nothing. They're just part of a little blip. You got Chem China, which is a kind of a new player coming in. Corteva, which is a DuPont spinoff. So the whole, in just 5 years, the industry's just flip-flopped and gotten even bigger, but everybody's buying everybody else. That's happened in other industries too. We were talking about this earlier today. The railroad industry. Okay, back over the last 40-some years, we're down to 4 major railroads now. The beer industry, near and dear to my heart. Okay, it's down to basically 6 players plus all these little ones have popped up. You know, automobile manufacturers, the banking industry, groceries, oil companies have all merged, computer companies, even the RV industry has done a lot of merging. Now that we're down to just a few players in that industry too. So is it going to happen in the organic food industry? You betcha, it already is. This is a recent map, and all these big players, Dean's, Kraft, Hershey Foods, Heinz, Cargill, they're all buying up companies to make money on the organic industry. So it's going to happen. Anytime you have a industry that is being successful, you're going to have mergers. They're going to slowly work their way through things. So next question, are they safe to eat? There's always concerns about that. And there's been a number of studies, and the scientific community basically says there's no real specific reason why they aren't safe. I'll just flip to this slide here. There are people willing to make some money off of it. These labeling, the public is telling people we need to know what's a GMO and what's not. You probably have seen this type of label on a lot of foods. It's non-GMO product. They have to prove to an organization that's made up of people that sell organic material, no scholarly type people on that committee, and then they are allowed to put that on their label. You see, this is on some oatmeal over here. It says non-GMO, and it's got their label right there. Interestingly, there have been no genetically modified oats put out on the market to begin with. So, you know, sure, they got it on their label. So, nutritional differences. There's been 2 meta-studies, which a meta-study is basically when they look at a whole bunch of little studies and they kind of crunch them together. London School of Hygiene, Stanford University, both did 2 studies, basically found that there's no nutritional differences between GMO and non-GMO foods. That's what they boiled down to. So have they benefited consumers? Not really, not directly. Most of the GMO traits have been targeted to producers to save them money in the process. They benefit the farmers, they may benefit some of the companies. It's really hard to find something that's really making them money. But that may change in the future. So we may start seeing some GMOs that actually benefit consumers. For instance, there's one that's being looked at right now that causes the apples to not turn brown after you cut them open. Here's a potato that's got that basic gene in it also, where it oxidizes, turns brown, and basically rusts. Same thing as rust. Makes them look bad, but they don't change flavor or anything. So that may be happening fairly soon. The Swiss, this fellow is a Swiss scientist. He has invented a type of rice that has that could cure vitamin A deficiencies, which is a huge issue in developing countries. But it's still not on the market, even though that was developed in the year 2000. There's just a lot of friction for making that happen. There's been some other types of rice that have been fortified with so they contain more iron. That will be something that'll be coming out. And they've got some tomatoes that, rather than being red, are now purple, and those contain more antioxidants, which we know are good for your health. So there's been a lot of hype about GMOs, whether they're good or whether they're bad. The differences have really been rather small or incremental as far as the public's concerned, but there's a lot of potential. Think about this. We've only had these things for 20 years, these GMOs for 20 years. The impact to date has been fairly modest. The Wright brothers flew in 1903. Okay, 20 years later, the first air transportation companies popped up. 7 years later, Purdue put a man on the moon. Okay, so it took 70 years to get that far. So things are going to be happening within that industry that are going to be changes that are going to be adopted a little bit quicker, I believe. So we're just in the opening stages of this thing. I think it would be kind of foolish to abandon this because we've got some biotechnology types of things that can really make a difference in the world. Here's an example of one. There's a virus that affects papayas, which is one of the bigger fruits that's consumed by the rest of the world. The plants here on this side have the transgenics. These are the ones that have the virus. See? It makes a huge difference as far as how well these plants grow. One of the biggest diseases that has caused huge issues over the centuries has been late blight in potatoes. We had a round of late blight go through our potato crop here in Elkhart County about 5 or 6 years ago, wiped them all out. Here's the difference. These potatoes here have the gene in it that protects against late blight. All these ones here did not. So imagine how many more people you can feed if you've got that gene in there that can protect against late blight. So in the future, I think what's going to happen is we're going to see some really big changes. Photosynthesis can actually is a relatively inefficient process. There is some big potential there to improve the efficiency of photosynthesis. We're going to see a lot of things in the disease-resistant lines, nutritional use, even drought tolerance, which will be big as our climate keeps changing, and then we're going to see changes in the nutritional composition of some of these crops too. So a lot of stuff coming down the pike. Any thoughts or questions? Yes.
The benefit, talks about not any real benefits to the consumer, but I would assume that there are, just the fact that you're getting more efficiency in crop raising.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not direct. You know, if you can produce a lower cost crop, then that does affect the public as a whole. You know, somebody who can save a little bit of money for themselves, that means they can go out and spend more money on equipment and, you know, other kinds of things. So, sure. Yeah, question back there in the back.
Yeah, I grew up on a very big operation in Wisconsin. I remember raising 100 bushels per acre of corn. That was a big deal. What do you see today?
250.
Jeff, could you repeat that question?
The question was how many, you know, he grew up on a farm where 100 bushels per acre was a big deal on, you know, a cornfield. Now the average is probably running anywhere between 220 and 250 locally. Now this year we got hammered with a disease that actually some varieties were resistant to. Those varieties got in that 200, 220. The ones that didn't, that weren't resistant, ended up 120, 130.
Well, you were talking about the cost of seed. That's how farmers get cost that much of the increase.
And they're a lot more efficient too. It used to be when we figured out how much nitrogen you need to put on a crop of corn, you figured about 1.25 pounds of nitrogen per bushel of corn produced. These days it's 1.1. So we've cut that significantly over just 30 years.
Talk about antibiotics being used raising cows and pork and chickens and stuff like that.
There's people out there that want you to think that's common. It's not.
Oh, what was the question?
The question was antibiotics being used in animals, and it's not very common. It's just not. It's too expensive to feed those things. So.
A question online, Jeff. Discuss agriculture spillover effects between GMO and non-GMO. I'm not sure I understand that. Anthony, you want to unmute and ask that question?
I'm thinking in terms of the crops where they're building sort of better that are disease resistant, and sometimes that's led to some issues in legalities of people who don't have those crops purchased wind up getting kind of sued and causing all kinds of trouble.
Did you all hear that question? He's talking about people that or companies that are putting genetics into plants, and that they own that patent right, basically. And then a farmer will save that seed and try to grow it as their own, but the rights belong to that company. And yeah, that does happen. It is a, you sign an agreement when you take on these transgenic crops that say you are not to save that seed. Now, if you think about it, it's kind of a goofy thing, because when these transgenic crops cross with each other, what you will get is junk if you take the seed from hybrid plants. You get nothing but junk, because hybrid plant is taking one mother plant and one father plant and crossing them to get that specific uniform style of plant. If you cross two hybrids, you get junk. Okay, you don't get anything. If you in soybeans, if you have those cross, then about 25% of the plant will carry on that characteristic. So, for instance, if you were to collect the seed from a Roundup ready field and save those seeds and replant them the following year, only 25% of those plants are going to remain true to that type. And if you go out there and spray Roundup on it, you're going to lose 75% of your plant. Okay, but people have tried it, and they usually end up getting burned by it because they don't understand genetics.
Anthony also asked about plants that are being grown that are better at capturing CO2. It's kind of unrelated, but is that, can you talk about that? Yeah,
that could actually happen. There's a lot of ways that farmers are now learning a lot about this. This has been a kind of a popular topic on a lot of the online forums and such about capturing CO2, trying to put more of that back in, the carbon back into the soil. We do a fairly good job of that here locally. A lot of our acres are no-till, which is a carbon-friendly method of farming. To be honest with you, the thing that scares me to death is the organic farming. Because if you see the way they do it, it's very, very heavy on equipment. A typical organic farmer working here in Elkhart County, I'm talking big units, not these little backyard garden things that aren't really producing a whole lot. They're making 6 to 8 trips across their field in a year with heavy equipment, keeping the weeds down through cultivation rather than by utilizing the mulch, the corn stalks, and that sort of thing that's out there. They're losing a lot of dirt. They're losing it. It's going in the ditch. It's filling up the ditch banks, that sort of thing. I went to an organic field day. I don't know, it's probably been 10 years ago or so. When I left that day, I went with another fella, and on the way home, that's all we talked about. I didn't realize at that point in time in my life that I was so anti-tillage, because tillage is what loosens up the soil and causes all this erosion. So I guess in the long term, I think it's more sustainable to have herbicides used than it is using tillage. Because I just seen, there's a muck field south of town, south of ELKR here, that I have watched it over the last 40 years go from level with the road to about 6 to 8 inches lower than the road now, because it's all blowing away. The guy's farming it organically. He's tilling it and tilling it and tilling it. He tills it in the fall to get rid of the weeds. He tills it in the spring to level it out. Then he plants. Then he hits it with the cultivator. Then he goes through with this thing. It's like a big propane tank. And he burns, if he's growing corn, he burns the corn down to the ground along with the weeds. The corn, because the growing point's below the ground, will come back up again in a weed-free environment. And then he cultivates. Somewhere in there, he's probably putting on some fertilizer of some sort. And then he harvests. So what is that, 10, maybe 8 to 10 passes versus somebody who's using the no-till method, it's probably making 4 to 5 passes in a year. There's something wrong with the marketing that's going on. It's not quite as honest as what I wish it was, but there's a lot of folks that think they know a little something about agriculture on the West Coast and on the East Coast, and they're telling us how to do our jobs, and they don't really understand what's going on.
Just out of curiosity, I'm curious, having both sides, this is obviously a really controversial subject. You get a lot of feedback, I'm sure, on. How do you speak with us? How do you speak to someone with such an opposing point of view? And what are things that what do you talk about? I mean, you talked about genetically modified and the old fashioned way and how it happens now with CRISPR, when all of us, in fact, are eating things in this room that were intentionally crossed, but you said it's the old way. What are the concerns? Are there frequently asked questions that are just way off base in terms of what is wrong with the GMO that we are all afraid of?
That list of 6 questions I had there.
That was it.
Those are the ones they ask primarily, and they're getting that off of Facebook. They're getting that off of different places, and you see things long enough that you begin to believe them. You know, we've experienced that for the last couple of years now on all kinds of different kinds of topics. You start to believe stuff that isn't necessarily true. The only thing you can do is just show them. You know, I'd love to take some people out to that guy's fields. He probably wouldn't want me to do that, but take him out there and say, you know, this field used to be level with the road. Where did all the dirt go? Well, in this case, it's a muck field. Muck is very susceptible, very lightweight, fluffy soil, very susceptible to wind damage. Blow right away. You all have seen the black cloud of dust coming from the road over there on the other side of South Bend. That's muck fields too. And it blows very easily. So if you don't leave the crop residue on the surface, or you don't have windbreaks every so often, you're going to have erosion. And that's what's been happening at this place.
Talk a little bit on to create a GMO crop. They have one of consultation between 2 different plants, or is what's processed and the pay to edit it. What point is something that's hard to read or why?
Well, what they're doing, she's kind of I think what I'm interpreting it as kind of what is the difference between a GMO and a hybrid in a way. A hybrid is when you have 2 parents of known backgrounds. So you've got this particular female or a plant that you're going to use as a female plant. Any of you here ever help out Detasta? Okay, great. You guys understand this then, or you should understand. The plant that you were taking the tassel off of was going to become the female plant, essentially. The tassel's the male, the female is the ear. When they remove that tassel, and you've got that other plant there that you're not removing the tassel from, that's the male genetics. You're forcing those plants to cross with each other. So that's what creates the following year. The reason they call it seed corn is because they harvest those seeds to use in production the following year. That makes sense? Now, what they're doing with CRISPR is completely different. Algae. Algae does not have, it has natural resistance to Roundup, okay? So they were able to go into algae, locate those specific genetics, snip them out with the scissors they call CRISPR, take that gene and put that into place where they're in the soybeans and create the genetically modified plant that we know as Roundup resistant soybeans. That's how they did that. So it's very specific on how they do it. They produced that plant, they produced numerous copies of that, and then they just have to keep breeding and breeding and breeding until they get enough seed to start doing something with it. But of course, that part of it's a relatively slow process, and they have to, you know, it takes them probably 6 to 8 years before they get something. And by that time, by that 6 or 8 years, in the growing it in a greenhouse, they're going to know whether that plant's going to be successful or not. Yeah.
Jeff, I've always been a backyard gardener. I've used compost. I use Miracle-Gro. I do well on every vegetable that I've ever grown. But I don't do well with tomatoes. They split at the top before they ripen. I've asked men that I thought were better gardeners than I, and I get 2 answers. One is, you remember the spring, how cool it was, how wet it was? The other will say, you remember the spring when it was so dry, we didn't have rain? Now.
Next question, please. Yeah, it is a growth thing. When they grow rapidly, you end up with those growth cracks, essentially. So if you go from a period of being relatively dry to relatively damp, that's when you tend to get those cracks. And we had like 3 different periods of summer where we had a lot of those growth cracks in my tomatoes at home. Seems like the whole summer was like that this year. They had some more questions. How about you?
Where do you notice any correlation between where people stand on the non-GMO, GMO scale compared to the conservative, liberal political scale?
No, not really.
Repeat that one too.
The question was, is there any relationship between how they stand on GMOs versus the political scale? And I'd have to say, no, I don't really notice.
In the last few years, there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of people that have become gluten intolerant. And I invariably hear this because of the GMOs and all that we have. Why weren't these people gluten intolerant 50 years ago, 30 years ago? They said, and their response inevitably is because the GMOs have changed the wheat, they've changed the. Is there any merit to that? Or what? Or I don't know.
You know, same thing is true with peanut allergies and that sort of thing too. You know, those have hiked up quite a bit in numbers. I have a feeling that we have changed our diets quite a bit from what they were 50 years ago or 60 years ago, and that's probably got more to do with it than anything. We eat a lot more pre-prepared meals that we don't necessarily know what the ingredients are. That's probably got more to do with it than anything. I don't think you can pin it on GMOs. The whole the whole thing, there's so many people say, we need to get people to eat more organic, and the fact is, if a tomato costs you 50 cents, or if a tomato costs you $1, there's gonna be some people that aren't gonna be able to afford $1 tomato. And what we really need to do is get people to stop eating their chips and junk food and start eating fruits and vegetables. That's more important than anything to me. It makes more sense. But Jessica and I have both worked at the food pantry in Middlebury for a number of years, and you see some of the junk food wrappers in the back of some of those cars. The people that are coming there, and it's just a lot of junk food, chips, and cigarette wrappers, and pop, and all that kind of stuff.
One other quick one from Anthony. Speaking of greenhouses, do you see the aspect of farming increasing to expand access for year-round crops?
There's a lot of interest in year-round crops, putting out greenhouses, that sort of thing. The big headache in our area is the heat cost. January, February, March are big months as far as the heating bill is concerned. So, you can raise some things like some of the lettuces and the cold weather crops in a greenhouse over the winter, but you don't necessarily make a lot of money off that because they grow slow too.
Well, good. Jeff, I imagine you'll stick around. And thank you very much. I love this, and if nothing else, I know we have a really diverse group here, across political spectrum and health and whatnot. And I absolutely, if nothing else, I really appreciate the fact that it gets people thinking about what is going on, which I'm sure is what you're all about at the extension. So that's a good thing. But thank you very much for being here today and sharing that with us. Do you mind, the question came up, is that slide, if we were to make it say a PDF, would that be a deck that you would mind sharing with members in here?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Because one of those, I love the consolidation of businesses slide. That was fascinating. Were those relative sizes, or was it more representative? Oh, those were. That's very cool. Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, cool. Thank you very much for being here. And everyone else, I've got, if you didn't get a chance to sign up for November 29th, I've got those right up here. Julie, we got a good list. This is good. We've got quite a few people, and we've got a few people on the open mic sign up. I added my name to that list. You'll just have to wait and see what that is. It does not involve a chipmunk costume, however. It does not involve. Thanks everybody for being at Rotary today. If you would like one of those information sheets about the matching gifts opportunity, come and grab that. Thanks for doing all that you do in the community. Go out and serve and have fun doing it. Rotary's adjourned.